Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at the Ocean Pavilion. What? They can't hear. Can you hear now? Is that, people are saying yes. Oh, there. Thank you. Thank you. It takes a village. We're going to figure this out. I am so excited to be here with all of you as we kick off week 2 of COP27. And today, being Gender Day, it's wonderful to have you join us for this conversation on women's leadership in ocean science. I'm Janice LaChance. I'm the Executive Vice President for Strategic Leadership and Global Outreach at the American Geophysical Union, and we've had the privilege of putting together this panel of incredible women leaders. And since this is about ocean science, I say let's just dive in. Our panel today is comprised of true trailblazers, women who have broken through to lead and inspire their colleagues and future generations. I'm honored to be joined by them here. So let me start with introductions, and you notice we do have an empty chair. I will introduce that person in the hopes, great. Now we have all the awesome women leaders here. Thank you, Carol Ann. I think you're standing in a long line. Yeah, okay. But we're going to start with Dr. Susan Lozier. She is president of AGU and dean of the College of Sciences at the Georgia Institute of Technology, and she is the Betsy Middleton and John Clark Sutherland Chair. Susan is a physical oceanographer with an interest in large-scale ocean circulation. Overall, her research focuses on the ocean's meridional overturning circulation of the ocean and how that circulation impacts the transfer of heat and fresh water from one part of the ocean to another. Susan is the International League for the Overturning in the Subpolar North Atlantic Program, OSNAP, observing system. OSNAP uses data from moored instruments, satellites, ocean gliders, and floats to provide estimates of the ocean's velocity, temperature, and salinity fields. The project is providing much needed data to understand the role of ocean circulation in the present and future climate, and will help improve climate models that are used in the assessments by the International Panel on Climate Change. She initiated and for over a decade led the Mentoring Physical Oceanography to Increase Retention, Empower program, which has served as a model for other mentoring efforts in earth and space science. Dr. Carol Ann Clayson, can you say hi? There we go. We're so happy she was able to get here. This will give her a couple minutes to catch her breath. She is a senior scientist and associate director for research strategies in the Department of Physical Oceanography at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, fondly known as WHOI. She is a former director of the Ocean and Climate Change Institute and founder of the Center for Air-Sea Interaction and Marine Atmospheric Sciences. She has served on numerous national and international science panels, including holding a former position as the co-chair of the climate panel for the NASA Decadal Survey for Earth Science and Applications from Space, and at the American Meteorological Society Council. Her current areas of research include understanding upper ocean mixing processes, how air-sea interactions affect the climate scale, and ocean impacts on the global water cycle. She is chair of the World Climate Research Program's Global Energy and Water Cycle Experiment CFLEX project, an international group of scientists working on improved estimations of air-sea turbulent heat fluxes from satellite. Dr. Margaret Lyman, sitting next to Susan here, is the director of the Scripps Institution of Oceanography and UC San Diego's Vice Chancellor for Marine Sciences and Dean of the School of Marine Scientists. She is an award-winning oceanographer and distinguished national and international leader in ocean science, global climate, and environmental issues. Her research in paleoceanography and paleoclimatology focuses on ocean sentiments and their relationship to global biogeochemical cycles and the history of Earth's ocean and climate. She also served for 7 years at the National Science Foundation as an assistant director for geosciences and coordinator of environmental research and education. During that time, she led government-wide planning for climate research through the U.S. Global Change Research Program and co-led the U.S. government's planning for ocean research. Margaret also spent 2 years as the Chief Science Officer of Climos, Inc., Incorporated, a startup focused on green technology for climate mitigation. Dr. Likia Perez-Cruz, can you say, there she is a paleoceanographer and the director of the research vessels of the National University of Mexico and also AGU's International Secretary. The vessels she supervises have conducted oceanography and marine geophysics expeditions in the Eastern Pacific Ocean, the Gulf of California, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Caribbean Sea. Likia has been navigating and studying the Gulf of California for several years, investigating climate and ocean variability, processes, mechanisms, and teleconnections. Using different tools of micropaleontology, geochemistry, isotopes, sedimentology, and magnetic properties, her research focuses on the marginal and axial basins, drilling and coring, looking at the water column, ocean currents, and conducting bathymetric surveys. In 2019, she participated in the National Discovery Ocean Program's Expedition 385. Dr. Suzanne Mohammed is head of Marine Geophysics Department at Egypt's National Institute of Oceanography and Fisheries. She is vice chair of IOC Africa, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, and a Group 5 expert on the Global Ocean Observing System Steering Committee. She works on mapping the seafloor using marine geophysical techniques, acoustics, seismic, gravity, and magnetic for seabed classification and bathymetric maps, hydrocarbon exploration, and archaeological studies. A principal investigator of many scientific national and international research projects, she participates in many scientific international expeditions and programs. A strong advocate for promoting women empowerment and leadership in marine scientific research, she is a member of the Advisory Committee of Women in Deep Sea Research and a strong, strong friend of this pavilion. And none of us would be here without her. Let me guarantee you that.
I had a very different path. I was not involved with math and science as a child. I wanted to be a lawyer. And when I was in high school, I had an absolutely magnificent biology teacher. And I fell in love with biology because he was so accessible and he just made it wonderful. And so then I thought I was going to be a biologist. And I thought that until I went to college. And I couldn't get rid of the reluctance that I wanted in geology as an elective. And at the end of the class, the TA asked me if I wanted to have a part-time job with one of the geology faculty. And it was a very senior person, Harold Wanless, who always had an undergraduate who helped him with his research. And I got to do that. And he treated me like another scientist as opposed to an undergraduate student. And he had, those were the days when, things weren't online, and he had a whole library in his, he had a whole room that was a library next to his office. And he would send me in there and say, look up the paper by, so-and-so from such and such. And then he would have maps laid out on the table, and he'd say, where should I draw the line based on what you read in the paper? My God, you have to tell him where to draw the line and get wrong. So it really gave me an opportunity to think about myself as someone like him. And so that was it. I was intense with geology. But I always studied sediments, and when people talked about the ocean, and this was a long time ago, they didn't really have the story of the sediments. So I thought, I'll go off to Oceanography, I'll get the whole story, I'll do that geology, and I just never went back. After that first time at sea, I was like,
I'm a city girl. I'm not a ocean girl because I was born and grew up in Mexico City. But a few years ago, I had the opportunity to participate in an expedition in the Gulf of Mexico as undergraduate student. So, since the first day, I fell in love with the ocean. So, for the time, I learned and recognized the value of sediments in the sea world because they are amazing archives that preserve and record the history of the Earth, the planet Earth, not only related with the climate or the dynamic ocean dynamics, but for me it was very important to recognize this kind of archives, and they were in the deep sea. And so I decided to shift my interest at that time to be a oceanographer and molecular metrology. So one of the biggest challenges that I have faced in my country is that we don't have enough resources for marine projects. So unfortunately, we are a small community with less than 10 scientists doing oceanography. You can imagine. So I had the opportunity to be part of the groups in the International Ocean Discovery Program, and gave me the opportunity to follow my interest and to be part of amazing discoveries. So I continue participating in expeditions and projects, and lately also dedicated time to developing ocean research in my country to add my grain of sand, hopefully for a bright time, for brighter future, and waving ways.
Thank you.
Dr. Suzanne, thank you.
And for me, it's a little bit different because I'm born in a city on the Mediterranean Sea, so connected to the sea. It's part of our life.
A little close, a little close.
Daily life, we are connected with the sea. And I remember while I was just 4 to 5 years, there was a famous TV show here in Egypt about the sea and the ocean. And the professor that gave this show is one of our main professors of marine science. But by this time, I didn't know how much he is magnificent. I just realized that when I grown up and had my position in the National Institute of Oceanography and Fisheries, and I found that he was one of the founders of the institute and the main presidents of our institution. Professor Hamid Goher is a famous one in this field. And by this TV show, we have raised up to love the ocean and be attached to it. After that, after I finished my undergraduate, I directly hired in the National Institute of Oceanography, started to have my master's PhD. Then I become now the head of the marine geophysics department. What is worth to see here is this department. I'm the first woman to have this publication on it. After 100 years of dedication, which I'm very honored. And also, I'm the first chief scientist for our research vessels, Sasabi for exploration. I'm the first woman to have this opportunity also, which I'm so proud. The last thing that I like on my career is teaching, because I teach also in Alexandria University for undergraduate and postgraduate students for 10 years now, and this is the most amazing part of my life, to teach others and let them feel the inspiration of life, how to like the marine science and go especially for exploration. Yes. Thank you.
Great, Carol Ann, thank you very much. I hope you've caught your breath and are ready for this question.
I have, thank you so much. So I grew up in Colorado, which is not by an ocean, it's by the Rocky Mountains. And I was going to be an astrophysics professor. That was my goal when I was a teenager. So I went to college, I majored in physics and astrophysics. And at some point I realized there are very few jobs in astrophysics. And I thought, what can I do that's kind of like astrophysics? And so I applied to graduate school in aerospace engineering sciences. Because that sounds like outer space, right? So they asked me to come and visit one of the places that I applied to. And they started showing me pictures of the ocean and the temperature of the ocean from satellites. And they said, would you like to study the ocean? And I said, you can do that as a job? That like somebody will pay you to do that? I didn't know that was even possible. They said, it's just math and physics. I thought, well, math and physics, I can do that. They said, well, if you come, you'll be the only female graduate student. And I said, that's fine, because I'm the only female undergraduate student, so I'm kind of used to that. That one thing I remember so distinctly about that was when I was an undergraduate, I realized in many of my classes I was the only woman that's when I took to wearing dresses all the time, because I thought I'm going to beat them at their own game and I'm not going to let them forget that I'm a woman in science. So usually I have nicer shoes on than this, but I was running. So in my research area, I work both with atmospheric scientists and oceanographers. So there's two different communities, and they both have their interesting aspects of them. And it has really been a pleasure to do that. Why do I continue to do it? I do it because I have 4 children. And I really care about what happens in their lifetime, what their life is like. Nothing to me is more important than they are. And thinking that I can do something that may be a benefit for them is really a motivating factor for me. I love the ocean, but I really love them too.
I told you they were inspiring. You all clearly bring your own personal story to your work, and I do want to give the audience time to answer questions, but I have a lot more. So I'm going to use my privilege as moderator to do that. And I'd like to delve a little deeper with each one of you on your story, on your history, on what motivates you, and how you're using that to clearly inspire others, generations to come, your colleagues, and I would bet even some of the folks in generations that preceded you. So I'm going to start with Likia. Wait, it's not a test, Likia, it's okay. Likia, you've had extraordinary experiences that include research on both land and sea. Tell us more about your experience leading critical research while at sea on research vessels, as well as the responsibility that you bear for ensuring the well-being of those on board.
Okay, well, I had the fortune to participate in and conduct more than 40 oceanographic and drilling expedition in Mexican and international basins. So I'm currently, as Janice mentioned, I'm the director of the Division of Research Research at the National University of Mexico. And we represent a lot of challenges and also opportunities. And it's very exciting because Mexico it is an amazing place, and the waters in Mexico include those parts of the Gulf of Mexico, the Eastern Pacific Ocean, and the Caribbean Sea. So including also the amazing Gulf of California, that it is the youngest open basin in the world, and also one of the older, that is the Gulf of Mexico. And for me, this is very exciting, but it's very challenging also, because we have a few research vessels to conduct this kind of researches in marine sciences. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of resources and financial support for developing these researchers. And during the past 5 years since I am the chief, I'm very busy trying to get financial support from many institutions in order to modernize these vessels and also to develop new projects, not only with the Mexican community, also with the international community. And I feel very fortunate because currently we are developing research related with mitigation issues, for example, with the Japan agencies, and also related with the youth forests in the Gulf of Mexico, with universities like Texas, Scripps, and Florida. Just an example, okay? Another challenge was for me in the last 2 years was established a public protocol, a public mitigation protocol in the cruises in the research base in Mexico. You can imagine everybody was stopped at that time, but many people decided to continue sailing because they need to recover some equipment on some anchors that were deployed, and they were registered a lot of information. So I need to think of as soon as possible to a protocol to avoid the contagious of COVID in the ship. So the protocol was a little bit, but we face a lot of issues because we have to implement a fast protocol with less participation of the people, and also including many tests, PCR tests, and antigen tests, and also changing or implement new measures for cleaning and so on. And it was a nightmare. But fortunately, in the cruises, we don't have any contagion. So I feel very, very happy for that.
That's good. Lakia, I wonder if we could continue later maybe so that the other panelists can answer their questions?
Yes.
Do you mind? Okay. Well, the next question's going to go to Margaret. We're on a strict timetable here because there are other panels that are coming through. But Margaret, you've got such an impressive track record, not only in the actual science of the ocean, but also the governance aspects of this, how resources are identified and allocated to support this vital work. I wonder if you can talk a bit about those twin challenges, about being a woman in ocean science and how you've worked your way up within the politics of large research and governance institutions. An easy question.
Well, I wish I could answer it in that way, because if there was a formula, I could give it to all of you, and then you could all do it. But I never set out to be a dean. I didn't set out to go to NSF. I didn't set out to go to business. They were just opportunities that came. And I think that I got a wonderful piece of life advice once from a former member of, he wasn't my advisor, but he was a member of my committee. And he said, Margaret, when you have one of these things come up, everybody thinks it's a decision. And he said, it's not a decision. It's a decision is something like choosing which size of breakfast cereal to buy at the grocery store. It depends on the number of people in the family, how big the closet is, how many times a month you go to the store. He said, you can decide because you know what the consequence will be. He said, these are not decisions, these are commitments. And the thing about a commitment is that you have the responsibility to make that commitment effective. And so in going in that direction, you have committed yourself to it, and you have to make it work for you. And that has been such wonderful advice to me. And I think that it has also played out in things like policy, because there isn't one path, there isn't a cookie cutter that you can say, this will work. You have to, when you endorse a policy, when you work to form a policy, you have to be committed to it, and you have to throw yourself all in to make sure that that works.
Could you pass the mic to Carol Ann? Carol Ann, your work on the CFLEX project is really fascinating. Can you talk a bit more about that and the expansion of air-sea studies? What are you learning by working globally on this effort?
Thank you. So CFLEX was the first international project that I really ever led or worked on. And I still have my notes from when they called me up and asked me to do it. And I was taking notes, and years later I looked back at them and I realized I didn't know what I was writing down, and so I was writing things phonetically. And then I would look back at it and say, oh, I actually know what that means now. Like, I didn't know at the time. And so it was exciting and worrisome all at the same time to be asked to lead something like that. And working on the atmosphere-ocean problem is a fun one. I mean, turbulence is an unsolved problem in physics, so what could be better than to work on two turbulent fluids interacting through a permeable barrier, like exchanging all kinds of things. And then you've got clouds and other nasty things in that. I think one of the things that's been a sort of a challenge in this field is how little data we have. So for instance, there are 3 operational buoys, 3 buoys in the global ocean that are operationally, day in, day out, actually measuring some of the exchanges between the ocean and atmosphere. There are other buoys that measure some things that we then use a model to get those, but only 3, think of 3 in the global ocean. There are no operational sites other than large islands where they have balloons that launch, but that doesn't tell us anything about the atmosphere very close to the ocean. There are none in the global ocean. So we've learned a lot of what we've learned from satellites, but there's so much more to discover in this field. We really have not nearly as much of an idea about how those two fluids interact and how they exchange heat and water and carbon. In fact, there are no operational places measuring the carbon exchange between the atmosphere and the ocean on a day in, day out basis. So it is one of the great things I think in my life that I've seen over time is that there has become much more of an interest. So for instance, NASA asked me this year to be the science team lead for a planetary boundary layer satellite to try to measure the lower part of the atmosphere. And the U.S. CLIBAR, we have a panel now to think about a decade-long observational strategy for the upper ocean and lower atmosphere. So, you know, I started off someplace, there weren't a lot of people working in the area that I was, and over time, it's really grown. And so I'm looking forward to a decade of much more observations so that we can answer many of the pressing questions we need to for weather and climate.
That's great, Carolyn. Thank you. My next question is for Suzanne. She's holding the mic. Again, we really want to thank you for the role you've played in creating this wonderful space where we've been learning and networking all week long. It's made a huge difference for the ocean community, but I think raised awareness across COP about how important this field is. So thank you again. And, you know, while we're here at COP, we've heard a lot about inclusion. Could you talk more about your work promoting women in ocean science through the Advisory Committee of Women in Deep Sea Research?
Unfortunately, women is all women are underrepresented in roles in this field, especially for during the exhibitions, research cruises. So what has happened is that with the UN flows and also with IOC and ISA, they take this commitment for giving more initiatives for women to empower their activities in the deep sea, especially in deep sea researches. One of those activities I already had benefited from before. My early career, while I was just finishing my master's, I had this initiative to join an expedition in the Pacific Ocean for manganese nodules. What I have done is, after I returned back, I make awareness to my colleagues in the institution, especially for the girls, and include them and encourage them to go and apply to these initiatives. That was the main target, because here we are come from different cultures, we have traditions that not accepted girls to travel and go for expedition. After this, when they found that one of our colleagues go and return safe, and also have this much of experience, they all encourage to apply, and guess what? We have a lot of them have this experience afterwards. In 2021, the ISA had decided to make a project for empowering women in the deep sea researching, and I had the honor to be one of this advisory committee for this project. What we have done is awareness for the women, especially in developing countries, LLBs and seeds to apply for the simulation and face training activities. Also, we have did a gender mapping for all the developing countries and to realize where are the gaps and where we should apply more for those to have more opportunities. Besides the awareness and the training and building capacities that we have there. Thank you.
That's wonderful, Suzanne. Thank you. And last but not least, a question for Susan Lozier. So I've had the privilege of working with you at AGU on a number of efforts, and through all of those, I have learned that mentoring is really something that is important to you. It's embedded in your heart, your soul, and part of everything that you do. Could you tell us a little bit about the efforts that you have made to increase mentoring in ocean and all of science, and how those connect perhaps to where we're headed with the climate and making the necessary adjustments and changes and radical changes that are needed to correct this course.
First, I'm going to start with a short story. When I had my PhD exam, I was 3 weeks away from delivering my first child, very physically pregnant. At the end of my exam, which I passed, one of my committee members came up to me and he said, "Susan, congratulations." He said, "But I'm so sorry to see that you're pregnant." And I started to ask him why. And he said, "Well, I was hoping you would have a career in science." And so I said, "I'm going to have a career in science." And he said, "I don't think so." And I said, "I am going to have a career in science." And he said, "We'll see." And so for me, that experience, told me he didn't believe in me. And I just took it apart that I wanted to believe in people and support people, women, anybody in this field that have a passion to do it. And that's something that has just guided me. That story has stayed with me. I firmly believe that there's no nationality, race, gender, ethnicity that has a marketplace on good ideas and good talent. And so we all gain by having more people in this field. And that led me to work on mentoring programs for women in physical photography. But some people know that Empower program has stood as a model for other mentoring programs. But one of the things about the mentoring program has not just been, regardless of your race, gender, where you come from, who you know, that you can make it in ocean sciences. I've also really espoused the view that there are many pathways in ocean sciences where you can make a contribution. Some of us on this panel come from an era when the expectation was that you had your PhD, you stayed in academia. One of my former students who's here with the World Economic Forum, one of my students recently switched her research station to focus on ocean CDR. Another student of mine that went on to get her postdoc with me now works for a private company that assesses climate risk. So it's really the connection here is that when we allow for a big tent and let people know that this is an open and welcome field, regardless of what they look like or who they know, we also allow for many possibilities and many pathways in this field, and that's really guiding my work.
Thank you very much, Susan. So I do want to open it up to the group, but I'm also going to do something a little bit different. Do the panelists have any questions for each other? Yeah. So, good. We'll go ahead and move to the audience. Are there any questions to our panelists from the audience? Yes. Real close.
I feel so inspired just being here. So thank you. As a young feminist who is passionate about research, I'm curious if you could speak to the ways in which you see the missions of feminist movements and climate action and science converging or diverging. How do you see these two kind of
Yeah, I think that's a great point. For those of you that couldn't quite hear the question, it was about whether we saw a relationship between the feminist movement and climate action. And I think that it's definitely there. And, the feminist movement said, we see something really, really challenging in front of us. And we know it's going to take a long time to address, and it's going to take a change in culture to address. And I think that climate change, I think scientists early on thought, as we always do, we'll just tell everybody about the scientific data and they'll change. And we now know that, we have to change culture, we have to change economies. It's going to take a long time, and I think that we can take a lot of lessons from the feminist movement.
I'll just add something very quickly in that today's Gender Day, and the reason is it's really shining a light on sort of the disproportional impacts of climate, extreme events, climate change on women. And so I think the feminist movement was about disproportional impact and disproportional opportunity. And so to me, that's where I see that intersection, right? We want there to be proportionality or, equity across the board.
Anyone else? Yeah, let's see, the microphone. I wanted to say.
So in order to be here today, I just wanted to ask you if you have seen a difference from when you started your own journey as a young professional as of today in regards to what you can see from what's happening to young professional women in your department, or like, is it getting better? Do you still have the same challenges? Do you still hear the same comments?
Okay, thank you. I will tell you something that's from my life, my personal experience. When I was just a when I was just in the beginning of my career, early career, I had applied for some training in my institution. And by this way, it was for diving training. But unfortunately, our leader by this time told me this training are not for girls, it's only for boys. This really upsets me so much. But when I become now as a head of the department, and we really had different changes in the mind, and the president of our institute now, Professor Hamouda, is really encouraging all the women and the ECOPs, and he gave us a lot of opportunities. So what I'm seeing that life is changing. What I was talking about is something from 15 years, but but now it's changing, and with the Ocean Decade we are heading on, and with the UN initiatives for gender equality and for the empowering projects for women we all had, I think now it's different and more easier. But what I want from all the girls that please apply, because we did and offer many training and many initiatives, but the applications that come from women are still low. This is why we need more awareness. Everyone in his institution has to awareness more and more to the importance of women to participate. Thank you.
I'll just add one small thing from my experience. When I would go to conferences when I was young, I would be the only one there with a baby. Very often. I was the odd person. Like, I once ran a workshop while nursing, but that's another story. Now I see lots of younger families who come to conferences, both men and women who come with and they have babies, and it's really lovely to see that. And I'll just say one thing that really touched me. A few years ago, someone came up and said, I didn't know her at all. She said, I brought my child with me to a conference a couple of years ago because I had seen you do it and when I was a graduate student, and I knew that it could be done. I don't think you always know the impact that you have. When I would go to those conferences, I was stressed out of my mind, dealing with a baby and, my mother, because I would bring her along to help and all kinds of things. But you can have a really strong impact just by doing. Not making a big deal about it, but just showing up, being present, being good at what you do, and going on with your life.
As a woman of global South country, I can notice that there is a difference. And when I was studying my PhD, we represent less than 20% of the total of the students. Currently, the population of women in the graduate in ocean studies represent at least 40%. For me was very interesting. And not also in ocean science. In the STEM sciences also the women population is increasing. And for example, in geophysical engineer, now we have more than 20% of women in the career of geophysics. That is amazing, but in the past, only a few women were in these fields. So I think the changes in Mexico are changing slowly, but they are changing, fortunately.
I agree with you completely. We need to join together and make sure that we use our resources and talent to collectively advocate for women regardless of where they are in the globe. Agree. Thank you for your story. I hope your office was moved closer, was moved back.
Well, really thank you for all what you're saying. You're really inspiring. And I would like to ask you, like, what would you say or which advice would you give if you could go back in time and talk with yourself, like, I don't know, when you start all this journey in ocean science? Like, which advice or what would you say to yourself when you start all this journey, all this journey?
Maybe we'll all answer and keep this very quick. How's that? We'll have one piece of advice. I was too hesitant to reach out and ask for help and to sort of build a network. I just thought I had to do this all on my own. So my advice would be reach out. The young women here can reach out to me. So I would say build that network.
And I was one of the people who didn't think that I was good enough for this field. And I would have told myself, you go, girl.
Women are very strong, so be resilient. We can make the change.
Please be persistent because life is hard. You will face many problems. There is up and downs, but be persistent to reach your target.
I would tell myself, be less afraid about making changes and trying new things.
Thank you. I'm Jackie Brownett, Director of the Climate Science Centre at Australia's CSIRO. I have a question about diversity in general. So as I moved up the ranks as one of the few women, I would get asked to come to everything because they needed a woman on the panel. Whether I was useful or not, I was just present and being a woman. And I hear that from other diverse groups that we're now wanting to represent on panels, and I hear these same stories that I'm exhausted, I'm so busy being present and being visible that I don't get any work done, and then their careers don't progress. Do you have any advice on how to navigate that onslaught of great opportunities, but just too many?
One is you have to be strategic. You should not feel obligated to accept everything that comes your way. So feel comfortable with saying no. But if you don't really understand the strategic implications, ask someone. When I've gotten very comfortable with saying no, but I also then look for the opportunities for somebody else when I say no. So I would say look for those opportunities that really move your career and give you the opportunities that you want to, and then pass the opportunity when you do say no to somebody else, but be strategic. Don't feel guilty. Forget that.
I'd like to touch on something a little bit deeper in, I think, the experience of women, also LGBTQ plus folks in your career as well as maybe others. So it's been great to hear about the advancements you've been made, making the models and being set out. But safety is an incredibly important part of one's life and one's career. And we know there are still stories in Antarctica and the subtropics where people are going out of field work and they're being harassed and raped and made to feel very uncomfortable. We also watch as leaders are being promoted who have transgressed these issues. Even here I've heard stories about vessels and cruises where people don't feel comfortable going on them, and it's known by everybody, but the universities or academic institutions or others haven't done something about it. How do we continue to address that issue? Because safety is such a critical part of one's advancement, and we lose so many people when they don't feel safe.
Thanks, Randy. I think one of the really important things is that you not assume that the leadership does know what's going on. I have had the experience where there was an individual who had a reputation. Nobody had told me because they thought either she already knows or if we tell her she won't do anything about it. So that's the first thing. Don't assume that everybody knows. The second thing is that I think that I don't know if this is universal around the world, but in the U.S., people have made it very hard to take action because of the rights of privacy and the bending over backwards to not assume that because somebody has been charged with something that they are guilty of it. And it is one of the most frustrating things that I deal with as a leader when the complaint has to go to the Office of Prevention of Harassment and Discrimination, and then it sits there for months before they come back to say yes or no. And I think that that's another piece that is really frustrating, and we need to make those processes move faster so that people see that there is a will to change.
The other thing I'd say is we've kind of presented this as a forward-moving and always getting better. I wish that were true. I feel in many ways it is generally getting better, but I feel like it's every generation has the challenge of not letting things go back. Every generation, you cannot lose the thought that, oh, it's easy, everything is set, there's no problem. We have to, every generation, change minds, change hearts, and change attitudes. And so wherever you are, recognize that, be prepared for that, and be willing to fight for the things that are really important to you.
I think just to continue with the idea of what the new generation has to do. I think also the new generation has to recognize the knowledge of the previous generations. So in order to include this knowledge to solve the new issues that we were facing, like such as climate change.
Is there one last question from here?
Good afternoon, I'm speaking on behalf of the Environment Program Trust from Mumbai, India. So what would your advice be and strategy be for women in ocean leadership, but as citizen scientists?
Citizen scientists, advice for women in ocean leadership and who are citizen scientists.
Oh, I would say join our network. I mean, I think you're saying yeah, are there women who are citizen scientists? Absolutely. I think join our network. You can join any of the many professional societies or find an inroad. I think we are absolutely welcome. There's an increasing awareness of what local and regional knowledge brings to our work as we focus on climate change. So absolutely, I think you could contact any one of us and we would let you know how to join the networks that we're all connected to.
Anyone else?
Well, I want to thank everybody. The audience has been great. I think this is more questions than any panel I've been to all this week. So clearly there's a lot of interest here. You have heard from incredible women. They all have PhDs. They're all incredibly accomplished, but they still understand the importance of bringing others in, pulling other women and other young people into these networks, into this profession. And I'm just so proud to be associated with them. And I hope you will join me in giving them a strong round of applause. And I bet most of them will hang around for a little bit. So if you have additional questions or comments, have at them. They're here, they're excited, you've heard great advice, and I look forward to more interaction with all of you.